It's been a long budget season, so I'm exhausted. Although I have no excuse, I'm the youngest member. So. But I feel it's been a productive budget season. You might know some of the larger items. We were able to secure $300 million in state aid for universal pre-K. So we're going to begin the process of providing every 4-year-old in New York City with access to universal pre-K. And in addition to universal pre-K, we were able to secure $10 million in the budget to create more child care funds for families. So there's a real emphasis on early childhood education in the budget. As many of you know, the mayor has an ambitious housing plan. So we're beginning a $40 billion investment to create and preserve 200,000 units of affordable housing over the next 10 years. And it's going to include a wide range of income. You're going to have low-income housing, moderate-income housing, middle-income housing. We all believe that neighborhoods benefit from a mixture of incomes. And in addition to focusing on the financing of housing, there's going to be an emphasis also on maintenance. There's a phenomenon known as predatory equity. And I was the first council member in the new legislative session to speak about the issue. But you have private investors who are buying up huge numbers of affordable housing units for the purpose of making those units unaffordable. And there are two elements of predatory equity. One is over-leveraging. These owners will take out huge amounts of debt to buy these properties and take out more debt than the rental income of these properties can support. So these properties are indebted, meaning that the owner does not have enough funding to maintain the building. And the second element is speculation, is that the owner is taking out debt based not on the incomes of those who are living there presently, but based on the incomes of people who could live there potentially. So the intent of the owner is to displace the existing tenants, replace them with higher income tenants. And so an inevitable consequence of predatory equity is tenant harassment. And so we've been able to secure about $1 million, which was the first time in the council's history to fight predatory equity, to fight harassment against rent-regulated tenants. And many of those resources will come right here in the Bronx. And we're going to see an increase in the headcount of the NYPD. We're putting 200 more police officers on the streets through a policy known as civilianization. There are police officers that are performing administrative functions. We're going to hire 200 civilians to perform those functions so that we can free up those police officers and put them on the streets. And we're approaching crime comprehensively. We're not only going to focus on policing, but we've put in about $17 million to create 10,000 more slots for the Summer Youth Employment Program. We were able to secure $17 million to save the 57 NYCHA-run centers throughout the city. As you know, the centers, especially the one in Parkside, can be the only thing that stands between many of our young kids and a street group. And so we should think of community centers not only as a form of social service, but as a tool for preventing crime, a tool for preventing youth violence. And the Bronx has seen an increase in, I think the two boroughs that have seen the most shootings are Brooklyn and the Bronx, especially in Councilmember King's district, Northeast Bronx. And it's harder to control up there because typically you have violence concentrated in something like public housing. In Councilmember King's district, it's all over the place. The gun violence in this district is spiraling out of control. The council was looking to put 1,000 more police officers on the streets. The mayor did push back, but we were able to get at least 200 more police officers on the streets. We're going to keep pushing for more because we need more police presence. As far as public housing, we were able to secure over $200 million in new investment in public housing, and much of it will go towards security infrastructure, so money for cameras, money for layered access control, intercoms that control access to buildings, and new lighting. I put aside $3 million to provide cameras and layered access to Parkside houses. So it's going to be much more secure than it has been historically. And parks. For the first time, the Bronx, we have put in about $23 million to fund arts education in boroughs like the Bronx, because many of our schools effectively have no arts program. And I was able to secure $2 million for the Bronx River Arts Center, which will become the premier arts center in the Bronx. It's located in West Farms, and it's going to be constructed in 2 years. It's going to have super graphics, brought to the art center. So between housing, policing, arts, we were able to pass a budget that covers every base. Am I missing anything? That's about it. And we were able to secure, as far as LGBT services, we were able to secure $1.5 million to establish an LGBT senior center in every borough. That's for the first time in history.
Lesbian.
Gay, lesbian, yeah. LGBT seniors.
And transsex and transgender.
Because I'm here representing my neighbors from 2410 Barker and anyone else that lives in the area. We're faced with some very bad issue within our neighborhood, where we have neighbors across the street that are inconsiderate, who will barbecue on the sidewalk next to trees, next to parked cars.
So I just had a meeting yesterday about barbecue. I just had it, and we have a commitment. We were able to elicit a commitment from Parks Department to ratchet up enforcement.
But that's Parks Department. We're talking about the street. We're talking about a sidewalk, okay? All right? Where they're playing music until the wee hours of the night. Their children, or the wee hours of the morning, as I was just corrected. Their children run up and down the street, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, unsupervised, and I'm talking about little guys. I'm not talking about teenagers. The noise, they impede traffic, foot traffic, because if you're walking down the street, you have to cross the street to our side to continue walking. I mean, you know, we want to work. We tried calling 311. We tried calling the police department. I mean, we'll call anybody, just give us a number. But, you know, we're told there's nothing we can do about it. And I say nonsense because I'm a former city worker, and I know doggone well there are ordinances against, you know, loud music. And, you know,
you're talking about the house, I believe 2407?
We're talking about 2410, and the houses are
The houses right across the street.
2407 and 09.
Now, Rosie brought this to my attention early in the year. I thought I would receive a phone call when it was going on. I have not heard anything yet. I have a couple of people in the neighborhood contact me, because many of you know I'm up to late nights. They contact me starting 9, 10 p.m. when the noise starts ratcheting it up. If it's keep on going till 11 p.m., I tell them, look, you call 311, I'll call the precinct. You have to make a 311 complaint so it's documented. And I understand. And then myself, my organization, we will contact the captain, we'll email, and we'll try to get the police there as soon as possible, just so it's on the radar. Because you can make a 311 complaint, but then if you don't have contact with the police precinct, it might not be as much on the radar. So if you have one 311 complaint number, do you have one for that?
No, because even she called last week and she was told there's nothing that we can do by calling 311.
You have to call 311 to make a noise complaint.
Right.
That's the only place you can.
And if they don't want to make a complaint, call for a supervisor. Sometimes 311 says they can't do that.
Absolutely.
And I will personally reach out to the captain to address the noise pollution.
And get names.
I know the issues about barbecue within the park, and I know the park rules and regulations, but this venue doesn't apply.
No, I'll address I think you're exactly right about quality of life. So I think quality of life not only practices out noise pollution, but graffiti.
Can't zoom.
Actually, we do have funding for a graffiti removal program for Van Ness and for Allerton. So we're deciding how we're going to implement the program, but we have about $80,000 in funding.
I'd like to also.
So there's going to be an aggressive.
This is Dr. Afari.
Yes.
His office is right next door to those buildings. Okay, and she can tell you herself.
Oh, yeah. I leave the office quite late, often very, very late, and the children are running up and down, screaming, making noise, and I'm wondering, how is this acceptable in a working class?
Can everyone please take a seat? We do have empty seats.
A working class community where people have to get up and go to work the following morning. I mean, even if they didn't, still, they shouldn't do that. Screaming, people not to mention, they also throw balls on the sidewalks, and I can't tell you how many times the balls have hit parked cars, including my own. And I live in I live in fear that my glass will be shattered. Why should I have to live like that? And not only that, even when we're there, inside the house, they'll come to the staircase, the kids run up and down the staircase, I'm constantly opening the doors, or, my fiance has to open the door and tell them, no, you can't play here, this is not a playground. And then after we make a big stink out of it, then the parents will come. Or they're swinging on the gates, so that's supervised. Right.
And that's a doctor's office. Yeah, this is not medical.
So I'd be more than happy, I'll speak to both of you afterwards. I'd be more than happy to personally reach out to the county. Let them know about the noise pollution and the loitering.
Sorry, everyone, we have one meeting, we have to raise our hands for the film. Hold on. Ma'am, what is your name?
Oh, my name is
I just want to acknowledge my deputy chief of staff is Ronnie Deagle. So he directs my district office, so he's going to be assisting me in handling some of the complaints that we deal with.
Okay, we're going to have Fran, then Michelle, and then Mark. What is your name?
My name is Julie Zerhide.
Oh, you're on me.
Yeah. The last one, just tell people that when they call 311, they have to get a complaint number. Before anything, because if you don't, and you get a complaint number a few weeks later, you can call Community Board 11, and Jeremy will pick it up from there. They have to have a complaint when it's called 311.
Yeah, if you know of a pattern of noise pollution, I would submit a complaint, I would collect the reference number, and then from there reach out to either my office or your local community board. But I'm going to reach out to the captain because it has been a chronic problem. I do remember discussing it with you a few months ago.
Yeah, actually, the meeting started, but actually it's on control now.
And ma'am, doctor, what is your name?
I'm Dr. Jacqueline Afari.
Afari, how do you spell it?
AF is in Frank, ARI.
What's your, okay.
It's right across 24 cents.
Okay, sir.
It's actually in a house. I
For
don't
those
have
of
a
you who
sign.
don't know, I represent geographically the most expansive district. So I overlap, there are 12 community boards in, just to give you a frame of reference, Councilman Baca overlaps with 2 community boards, I overlap with 7. And so my district extends from here to the Grand Concourse. My office is on Fordham Road in Hoffman, 1 block away from Parker Avenue. It is accessible, only bus stop away to 12. For those of you that
Okay, I got to say, we have had some problems in the back where we're at. Yeah, I believe, I'm not too sure, but right shortly after the 4th of July, there seemed like there was a lot of gunshot in the back. I'm not too sure if it was coming from those apartments. And it was kept going on like from 1 all the way till 5 in the morning.
just continuous gunshots, or
Yes.
Oh, that's not.
as opposed to
Yes,
fireworks?
this is the day after the 4th of July, and it was going on all freaking night.
So continuous gunshots?
That's right, that's right.
It was probably fireworks.
And
On July 3rd,
to
it was
me,
fireworks.
to me, I don't think that should be allowed around, especially when you have people on the other side of the building, wall, and waking them up or anybody else. Who knows? There could have been a car could have gotten on fire or something. And I've been informed by the night crew who was working night that told me that the NYPD was patrolling the area on this. Did you hear
I
anything?
could reach out to the NYPD to see if there's any record of
Because this was really out of hand.
You said it was one day after July?
Right about 1 o'clock the next morning, it was going on.
Where was it coming from?
I'm not too very sure, but it seemed like it was coming from all angles,
And it was all night?
all single night.
I mean, I suspect it was fireworks, but I can verify with the precinct.
Okay, everyone, before you speak, please state your name.
Oh, by the way, Mario.
Mario, okay, please state your name and the area, specific area where you're talking about, okay? Mark, go ahead.
My name is Mark Hawish. I lived here 25 years on Owenville, between Richie and Allen. I'm an advocate for the homeless, the poor, the disabled, mentally and physically I'm more concerned, well, yes, I am concerned about the quality of life issues, and I'm also concerned specifically tonight about housing issues, homelessness, affordable housing units that aren't being made. The rent guideline board, they think they got a victory. They should have probably had a rent freeze, although I went in real estate, I got out of it, became my real screwed up business. You gotta screw somebody first, and then in order to get over, I'll tell them what it is, I don't candy coat nothing. You know, fair exchange is no robbery. You treat me right, I treat you right. Trust is earned and respect is earned. Now, my question is, people are talking here about quality of life issues. You got people getting raped, shot, stabbed, 12 people in a weekend getting stabbed, raped, shot, whatever. Major, major felony crimes. I'd like to know what the councilman's doing about that issue, because 311 is a farce in my mind. It keeps you on hold at least 20 minutes. I have a personal housing issue that's been going on almost 4 years. I have to hire a private attorney, by the way. But put money up and shut up. Scared money don't make money. 3 minutes. Put up or shut up. But anyway, my question is, 311 is great. Get the right operator with no attitude problem. But could you comment on what the housing problem and the rape and shootings and gun violence you're going to do about that? That's more important to me than noise. I mean, everyone doesn't want to hear noise if they're over 40.
Thank you, Mark.
But could you comment on the housing problem and gun violence and
3 minutes are up.
I'd like to hear about it.
So I actually believe both. I think it's legitimate to have concerns about both crime and quality of life.
No, but getting back, I don't want to take...
Mark, you have to let him answer.
As far as 311, it doesn't seem to work. Why is that the only way that has to be handled to get something done?
Because it's a government entity, that's why.
Contrary,
Everybody, one meeting. Thank you.
May I speak for a second?
Richie, you have any?
I think we should put the crime rate in perspective, in historical perspective, even though it feels like.
No, listen, excuse me. There's not enough history.
Mark, you answered your question. Let him answer.
But there's not enough history.
Mark. Okay.
Sal, go ahead.
Go ahead, Sal.
I don't have to. I'm a man. I'm allowed to leave. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day, sir.
Everybody.
I have things to do. Money to be made, bills to be paid.
All right, ma'am.
Yeah.
Come back later.
Okay, we won't do that.
I'm proud of the diversity of personality. We should keep the numbers in perspective, even though crime. Keep in mind, 20 years ago, we were in a much more dangerous situation. We had murder rate was upward of 2,000 murders a year. We had about 300. So, no, I know, but it's nowhere. Although crime, even though it has risen from last year, it's actually down from 2 years ago. If you compare from 2 years ago, the crime rate is still at historic lows. But as you said, we should take nothing for granted. So that's why, through civilianization, we were able to put 200 more police officers on the streets. And one of the core drivers of violent crime in the city is youth violence, street crew violence. You no longer have violence from the established gangs, the Bloods and the Crips. You have local street crews that are specific to neighborhoods, specific to buildings. And so that's why we're investing aggressively in youth programming, 10,000 more youth summer jobs, $100 million to create 100,000 more slots for middle school, after-school programming. So the emphasis is on both policing and youth programming to drive down the crime rate. So we're taking nothing for granted. Keep in mind, crime is still at historic lows.
But shootings are on the rise. Even the mayor said so. Once they did away with stop and frisk, everybody got guns now.
No.
Even the mayor said so the other day.
That's not true.
Now that he's investigating.
All right, I would like to say something. Since this is the first time that Councilman Torres is here,
Second time.
First time as a guest. I would like to state probably besides the quality of life, besides the crime, besides the noise complaints, probably the number one priority in terms of finance, in terms of money to be put in this community, and that's right across the street right there from that park. So I would just like to say this in front of everybody. We need a lot of investment in Bronx Park East. We need investment in Waring Playground. We need investment in Reese Field. We need investment pretty much between AV Avenue and Palm Parkway North. And I would like to request that Bronx Park East, funding for full renovations, which is going to be in the millions of dollars, basketball courts, the whole 9 yards.
Here's what I would say to you.
Well, hold on, let me finish. I'd like to request that that be a part of the participatory budget process.
So I'm going to start, I'm actually going to be one of 2 council members in the Bronx. We're going to start an initiative known as participatory budgeting. Each council member receives a share of the budget known as member items. So we are able to set aside capital funding, funding for physical improvements, infrastructure, for improvements in our neighborhoods. But rather than the council member deciding how to spend those dollars, I'm going to leave it to the constituents, all of you, to decide where those dollars should be invested through a process known as participatory budgeting. And we're going to begin forming the neighborhood assemblies within the next few months. So if the neighborhood decides that it's worthwhile to invest those dollars in improvements in Bronx Park, then I will respect their wishes. But I'm not going to make that decision.
No,
All of you will.
I just wanted to say that that is a big priority for me.
So. And again, you could either choose to spend in improvements in parks, improvements in schools, cameras on the streets. You have to decide what is most important to you.
Ma'am, hold on one second.
We're deciding what the budget should be. Minimally $1 million. Minimally $1 million. For physical improvements in the building.
The entire budget's going to be $1 million?
Minimally $1 million. We might raise it.
You mean per district?
Only one council district.
Yes, right, per council district, yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And then it's real money.
I actually have a 2-part. I don't know if it's a question or statement. Will we, I'm sorry? Oh, I'm Kate Cardona.
49 Region Community Council.
Thank you, Brian. Statement. For at least 8 to 10 years, myself and some other moms have wanted a community center in this community very badly because we feel that like also is a problem. And we're wondering if there's ever going to be a time that we're going to see a youth center here that provides multiple services for youth. You know, someplace where they can feel safe and it's not going to be out on the street, but that wants some direction. We have the 49th Explorers, which is wonderful. We have Bronx Hospital in terms of afforded. But for those that can't, you know, and those kids that maybe they go to public school and are constantly exposed to, will we ever see a community center in our time in this neighborhood? Is impossible.
Apart from, there is a community center in Parkside. And I don't believe you have to be a resident. There are a number of young people outside public housing who actually access those services. And we were able to secure about $19 million in the budget so this is part of our comprehensive crime reduction strategy. We're extending the hours of the community center until 11 p.m. and we're keeping it open 7 days a week.
To 11 p.m.
Yes. So if you know of young kids who need something to do, I would encourage them to go to that
Right, they
community
need
center.
some safe place for other youth and responsible adults.
And maybe we can arrange for the director of the center to come here and explain the full array of services.
Now-
It's going to be open until 11 p.m.
Every day, 7
every day, 7 days a week.
Those are all-night community centers?
Those are NYCHA and Cornerstone, and not only NYCHA residents attend those centers,
Mm-hmm,
But they're
but
open to all residents?
just like the senior center.
I don't think anyone knows that. Okay.
So a number of young kids from the Coops go to the Parkside Center, because the Coops frankly has more problems than Parkside.
So the second part of my statement is on a small block called Bruce Place. That's where I reside. There's a property that used to be a synagogue. It's changed hands many times. Several years ago, a church group purchased it. I'm not sure where they were from, and I think it changed hands again. It's constantly, every year or two, undergoing construction. I face calls. Those that face the church are complaining there's construction from 7 until 5 in the afternoon. Every day, and it's very loud.
Find out.
I don't know exactly, it's 619. I will take it. use it because it's changed hands. I don't want anyone to not have a place to worship, but if they're gonna constantly be reconstructing it, I don't know what they plan on doing.
You hear construction, how early?
It starts about 7 in the morning.
That's illegal.
Yeah, that, I
It's
kind
not
of
supposed to
figured
be
it was.
construction.
I don't hear it. I eat for work and like I said, I face Barker. So, you know, and I'm almost on Cullen North. But my neighbors are complaining, those that face this place are complaining, it's all day till about 5 p.m. They can't rest, they can't think, they can't read. They have to leave their homes to find peace.
Okay, then, I'll reach out to the owner and I'll take your information out.
Grace? Grace? Go ahead.
Hi. Well, a couple of things, just statements or not, well, question and statement, but to piggyback on Kay and Raphael, as far as having things in this community, things are always being built or done in West Farms or down in the South Bronx or wherever. Nothing ever gets done here. We have children and people that need things to do here as well, services. So that's one thing that I had wanted to say. Also, again, there's always things, people always plan things for the youth and for the elderly. And then there's us that are in between, like say from 30 to maybe 60, that there's nothing, it's a void. There's nothing for people in my age group to do or to have services, some things like that. I struggle financially. There's nothing really there's no place to go. I have grandkids that stay with me a lot of the time. You know, I can't afford to send them to camp. I can't afford to do that, neither can their parents. But, you know, there's nothing for my age group, any kind of help. Okay? So that's another thing. I represent the tween group, where I'm in between this and that, you know, and then there's us. I mean, there's a lot of people here, I'm sure, that are in that age group. We're not old enough for certain things, and we're too old for certain things.
What kind of program would you like to see?
Basically, the same kind of stuff that you would incorporate for the elderly and the youth, except more for our range. You know, maybe social things. You know, things like that. Just there's no social place for us to gather. You know what I mean? There's, you know what I'm trying to say? Yes? Blank.
Because you're right, the focus is mostly on youth and senior citizens.
Right.
For understandable reasons, right? In terms of youth, we're concerned about crime, and obviously our senior citizens are vulnerable, so we should naturally prioritize. The main service provider here is NIDC, and I give them about $50,000 to provide services, but it's mostly centered around youth. There's some
seniors.
prevention, if there's a tenant in danger of evicting, facing eviction, you can go to NIDC's headquarters. It's on Olinville between.
Oh no, I know what NID. Yeah, I know Hazel. I know them.
In fact,
Yeah,
Hazel
is on the board.
Yes, right.
Abina, and then,
As far as, I think we put in more money for, something I would like to see is more community gardens.
Yes, definitely.
I'm going to ask, I put in about $15,000 for the Bronx Green Up program, administered by the Botanical Gardens, and I would love to see, so that can be a recreational activity around it, some local members of the community organize it.
Right.
With technical assistance from the Botanical Gardens, and identify locations for garden,
Yeah.
maybe a green
Definitely,
market.
or farmers market.
Frankly, I feel like
Have a
Dallerton and White Plains Road is ideal for it.
Yeah, I mean, a farmer's market would be great here, because to get to the,
I'm going to push, actually.
you know,
And I would work
to
with
get
you.
to I would love to go to a farmer's market, but the closest one to me is over there in the Bronx Zoo, which requires car fare, which, $250 may seem like a lot, but when you don't have it, it's a lot.
We definitely need more services here.
Yes. And just one more thing, you said about bringing jobs, bringing,
Night, actually, which is, again, a social activity.
Right.
In Bronx Park, so you're going to start seeing movie nights every Friday.
okay. And just the last thing is that you said you're going to invest in this community. Will you be hired, will the workforce be from this community, or they're going to be outside people? I'm just saying, as it would benefit our community to hire people from the community to work in the community. And this way it'll come back in dollars as to our merchants and and our community as a whole?
There's a limit to what I can, as a council member, I can set aside funding, but precisely how those dollars are spent, and it gets, I don't have as much, because I think that can be tricky, right? If a council member could decide, who's hired to spend those dollars, I think that invites
Well, in other words, higher,
behavior.
okay, all right.
So I think there are limits on what I can do as a council member, but I can certainly, but I feel like there's a real need for graffiti removal. I worry about abandoned properties that become a blight on the neighborhood and blight on local property values. And so whenever there is a case of graffiti vandalism or a case of an abandoned property with overgrown weeds, you can reach out to our office, we can arrange for it to be cleaned up, because we have put funding for neighborhood cleanup in both Van Ness and in the neighborhood of Allison.
What is the deal? I live on the south, actually. It's not part of this community, but you guys don't kick me out. My concern is something that is probably concerning to a lot of users in the city. In the morning, there's delays on 5 a.m.
I think the two's the worst.
2 out-of-state homes. But it's really difficult to present anyone from the place to work. And any place where it's a level where lives in front. So it's an economic benefit, and it's also a competitive benefit, because now, if you're commuting from the Bronx to the city, you might not even have a job, and you're working daily. So is there any discussion on improving on the infrastructure for the train, or anything that we can do that MTA is
So yeah, so part of it, the MTA is all within the jurisdiction of the state legislature, not the city. But I'd be more than happy to reach out to the MTA and let them know our concerns about the two. I think the two is probably among the worst. I mean, I take the two every day, and I feel like I barely get to work on time.
right.
But I'd be more than happy to set up a meeting with the MTA.
One suggestion for you, Theo. There is the MTA, despite its failings, also has a web email announcement for problems on the 2 line. So if the problem happens before you leave, you will see something saying, sick customer, and you'll know to allow an extra half hour. Now, the problem can happen after you get on the train, and then you're stuck.
Even if it does happen, even if you notify, what other options have?
None. None.
TWU, local one.
Local 100. So even before I came to this meeting, I texted him, the train is out of service, number 2 train. So I sympathize with you because I also ride the number 2 train. So unfortunately, this was due to police activity. So it's kind of like also saying as a bus operator, and everybody say, well, why you're not on time? The schedules are estimated schedules, but in between them we have activities. We have activities such as what the Donald said, someone who gets sick, or police activity, and he can verify, he can show you the text I just sent him, police activities and so forth. And I can tell you from working from within, we are monitored. We are monitored. And now even buses have cameras. They know where we're at. They know the times where we're supposed to be. So usually things do happen. I would like to say that, their records and so forth, but, I'm an employee myself. And I know what I go through. They monitor us, they watch us. Usually delays are either wheelchairs, police activity, breakdowns, and so forth. And so I ride the 2 train just like yourself, and I leave earlier.
Right, so
And
maybe
so
the suggestion would be to accommodate these sort of mishaps on the trains. Can there be some sort of shuttle service? That is
yes.
180th all the way down to 125th Street?
They do that. I've driven those buses myself with buses, taking out of service. They do provide the shuttle buses.
But you can only
Shuttle bus, I was thinking maybe a train shuttle. making a
Well, it
nonstop
depends,
bus.
if the train cannot go through because of whatever incident is going on, then that's why they provide the shuttle bus.
Frankly, the shuttle, if there's a planned disruption in service, you can provide a shuttle. But if one person gets sick, they have to
They
stop
shut the whole thing.
So I don't see how you can't accommodate those circumstances because they just come unexpectedly.
Diana?
But, you can still, forward your concern. You certainly can forward your concern.
Diana, go ahead.
Hi, my name's
No.
Diana.
How are you, Diane?
I have an ongoing issue with the MTA, which is the guys who break the MetroCard machines, especially at the exits where there aren't any token booth cards, and then they stand around to sell you the MetroCard.
Yes.
And they're the ones who broke the machine. And a lot of people don't realize that the machine's been vandalized, and that's why they don't work. The problem is that it's very difficult to tell the MTA in time for them to do something. Because they have a 511 number, but there's no option in the 511 number to report that kind of thing. So you have to wait for this long, long menu that doesn't address your concern. And once you're going on the train, because you're going somewhere, so you get in, you can't then go out and tell the token booth clerk all the way to the end of the other platform. So there's like, what do you do? It's very hard to report it when it's happening, when someone can come to address it. And I really think it's a systemic problem with the MTA. It's not just in this stop, it's all the stops along the train. It's every exit where they've taken away the token booth clerk. And I know that they're not like under the city council jurisdiction, but I think they should really have to answer to us because it's such an important part of New York City life, of working youths, quality of life. They're encouraging criminal activity by having these unguarded entrances and exits to the subway, and then not providing a way for people to do something about it right then and there. They should provide some sort of phone number you can call right there directly to report it, or if you don't want to call 911, I mean, a couple of times the bus operators told me call 911. Go ahead, do it. That's the only way you're going to get action. So I've done it, but it always seems extreme. And when you call 311 and they say you can't deal with it, call 511. And 511 isn't set up to deal with it. And then there's supposedly a station manager, Joseph Solomon. But how do you reach him? I have no idea. There's no phone number, there's no email address for him. There's just a form on the website, but you can't go on the website when you're in the midst of your commute. It's really a failing of
I'm gonna get you his number, okay? I'll give it to Raphael, because I know who he is. As far as maybe collaboratively, we could write a letter directly to the president of MTA. Okay, so certainly from here, I can get the telephone number, I'll give it to Raphael. He'll share it to you, share it with everyone, okay? And whenever you experience the same thing, they are posted, the station managers' names are posted in mostly all the stations.
His name is there, but then there's no way to contact him.
There's no number at all on there.
I got you. I'm getting you a number.
Look, and I'd be more than, I'll reach out to the MTA for you. I think it might be worthwhile to have the MTA come to a future meeting. Since like there's so many questions. Well, I'll organize a forum in which the MTA, it seems like there are a lot of concerns about local transit.
So before we move on, I like keeping a positive vibe during the meeting, and I think one way to do that is just thank a couple of people and give an update on some positive developments. As many of you know, about a year ago, this group took on an initiative to bring back instrumental music to schools in the neighborhood, and as Paula and Adam know, we have started a summer band program at Middle School 135, which will support all three middle schools, Bronx Green Middle School, Pelham Academy, and Bronx Park Middle School. So just to touch on that, Councilmember Torres, I would like to request if in some way the funding, the citywide funding for the arts can somehow be directed towards Middle School 135, because we have started a small program, which is right now about 18 to 20 students, only brass. We have the instruments for clarinet and saxophone, but part of the problem with sustaining it is having the schools on board for sustaining being able to pay for the teacher, and more importantly, sustaining being able to pay for reeds, mouthpieces, and all the equipment, all the investments that is required to sustain a real band orchestra program in middle school 135. So that's the good news. And to go on with what you said about the arts, it would be great that that money could be put towards MS 135, as well as Public School 96, which has no band program that I know of. The instruments are just sitting there. I spoke to the principal a couple months ago. They can't afford to pay a teacher. So there's a big, still a chasm in this neighborhood of the arts. So it would be great if that money could be directed towards here. And I just want to thank a couple of people because they came to our block party and they helped out tremendously. Councilmember Torres was there. We had a talent show. You didn't participate? I didn't participate. We did have a piece.
I have no talent.
No. Not the talent show. I was talking about the pizza eating contest, which to me that's like the highlight.
I do need to eat pizza, though.
Yeah. Yes. So I just want to thank a couple of people who are here. And actually, this is the first meeting. I'm a big champion. Councilmember Torres is the big champion of getting youth involved in things in the neighborhood. Mr. Christoph Watson, who helped out the block party.
Yeah.
Ms. Paula Diaz and Adam Mendez for helping out. Bubbles, Miss
Lorraine Talbert.
I know. Sweating in the sun for about 6 hours, serving the food. The hardest part of any block party, serving the food. Pamela Hall, other sweaters include Roseanne Apria and Evelyn Hernandez Rosa. And who am I missing?
Norma?
Well, we have a choice.
No, you have a choice.
Absolutely.
And
What did she do? She just came.
as well,
No, she just came.
there are many others. The names escape. Francine Rowe. Yes, Francine Rowe, Kay Cardona. There were many others. So I just like keeping a positive vibe in the meeting. So I just want to say about that because that was very successful. Very cool block party. Does anyone else have any questions or concerns? Henry?
Harry. His name is Harry.
I talk me and Raphael, man. I'm a local DJ in the community area. I actually did a block party with him. He did give me an opportunity to where it didn't go very, very well.
What didn't go well, the party or DJ?
The DJ. We had no, because I wanna ask Raphael because I like to commend myself with the youth and the community to teach the kids how to DJ. If they want to DJ or something like that, teaching them how to.
As long as they're not playing that music in the neighborhood.
They can learn how to if they have a school party. If they like to have a school party, they do like the DJ thing, they have like a block party, they do things like that. It's exciting that give to the community. I would like to, give my, since I did a DJ for 17 years. I started when I was 18 years old. And I'm a dog and everything like that. I would like to teach the youth how to become a DJ if they like to.
Anyone else? Any other questions? No? Someone else?
My name is Richie. I have a comment about the vandalism problem at the turnstiles at the one-man train stations. The answer to that problem is leave a few more minutes and use the man platform. That's known as personal initiative.
Well, I would just
No, they want the other side.
MTA did something very borderline evil by firing all the station agents. I don't know how long ago it was.
2010.
and Pelham Parkway North train station was one of those effective. To me, it's a real simple solution. Just put back. How much, just personally, how much does it cost MTA in cameras, and how much does it cost the police department in watching over who's breaking machines? How much does it cost MTA in fixing machines? I'm sure that doesn't. I'm sure that adds up to about $60,000-$70,000 a year. Without money, just pay station aid. And it's just, to me, I've always wondered why MTA has to be a state agency. If New York City, if they're running the trains in New York City, they don't have the buses in New York City. Why can't they be DOT? I mean, that's the whole thing.
The MTA is a private company. It's not a city agency. It's a private company. It's not city.
We have no home rule over wage regulations. Unlike most municipalities throughout the country, New York City cannot set its own minimum wage. We need authorization from Albany. We cannot regulate rents. We need authorization from Albany. The City Council cannot legislate over education. We need authorization from Albany. We cannot even install speed cameras without authorization from Albany. So Albany micromanages how we handle local affairs. And trust me, I deeply resent it. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying, I wanted to say about that.
So I think it's, I think there's going to be a huge push for home rule, that the city should have more self-governance, more home rule over its own affairs. We should be able to install speed cameras without permission from a state legislature.
Wait, I want to say something about that.
Hazel Mura.
Hi, I'm really sorry I'm late. I just came from the hospital. My brother had surgery, but he's fine. I've been at NIGC for about, 20-something years. And ever since I've been there, one of the things that we've always fought for was home rule, especially about rent regulations. The city council, for whatever reason, never backed us up, and we had campaign after campaign after campaign. We used to go to Albany and talk to them about it, because we should not let state senators that live upstate tell us how to regulate our rents, because they don't know how we live down here. They're up there, like especially Bruno, when he was a big shot over there. He was up by Rome, I think it was. What does he know about what the city tenants